Every time you rewatch Revenge of the Sith, part of you hopes Anakin makes a different choice. You know he won't, but you hope anyway. And here's the thing nobody talks about. You're not alone in this. Millions of people perform this exact same ritual, this private act of desperate optimism, watching a movie they've seen dozens of times, while some stubborn part of their brain whispers, maybe this time. Maybe he'll trust Obi-Wan. Maybe he'll see through Palpatine. Maybe Padme lives. It never happens. It can't happen. The movie is the movie. But what if it could? Archive of Our Own hosts approximately 200,000 Star Wars stories. 200,000. And one of the most popular categories? Fix-it narratives. Stories written specifically to repair canonical tragedies. Stories where Anakin makes a different choice. Stories where Vader wakes up from the nightmare. These stories accumulate readerships exceeding 100,000 views. 100,000 people reading amateur fiction about a redeemed Skywalker. Because the official version doesn't give them what they need. Think about what that means. Think about Vader, not as the villain, not as the heavy-breathing enforcer of the Empire, but as a man who probably dreams. Dreams about the life he destroyed. Dreams about holding his children. About growing old with Padme on Naboo. About a version of himself that made a different choice in Palpatine's office. And then he wakes up. He wakes up to his depressing, rage-filled life, trapped in a suit that keeps him barely alive, serving a master he hates, knowing every single day exactly what he lost and exactly whose fault it is. That's the story fans keep trying to tell themselves. The alternate Vader. The one who escaped. Disney has the power to show us that man. They have the format. They have the precedent. They have the audience begging for it. And they're sitting on a gold mine they refuse to mine. Let's talk about precedent. Because this isn't speculation about what might work. This is documented proof of what already works. Marvel Comics launched its What If series in February 1977, the same year Star Wars debuted theatrically. The original run lasted 47 issues until 1984, with writer Roy Thomas creating the foundational premise. A cosmic entity called the Watcher, observing parallel realities where familiar stories unfolded differently. Issue number 1 asked, what if Spider-Man had joined the Fantastic Four? Sales data from the period indicates the series consistently performed within Marvel's upper tier of titles. The format was proven viable before the Empire even struck back. The concept was so successful that Marvel revived it in 1989 with a second volume running until 1998. 114 additional issues exploring progressively darker territory. What if the Avengers had never formed? What if Captain America had been revived during the 1950s? What if Gwen Stacy had survived? Readers who already loved these characters paid again and again to see them navigate alternate circumstances. DC noticed. In 1989, the same year Marvel's second volume launched, DC formalized its own approach with the Elseworlds imprint. The foundational text, Gotham by Gaslight, reimagined Batman as a Victorian-era detective hunting Jack the Ripper. It established a template for high-concept premise alteration that would generate some of DC's most celebrated stories. Superman Red Son in 2003 depicted Kal-El's rocket landing in Soviet Ukraine rather than Kansas. The 3-issue miniseries has remained continuously in print for over 2 decades and was adapted as an animated film in 2020. Kingdom Come in 1996 portrayed an apocalyptic future where aging heroes confronted a new generation of violent vigilantes. It won the Comics Buyer's Guide Fan Award for Favorite Limited Series. These aren't niche experiments. They're proven commercial formats that have generated revenue across 5 decades. On August 11th, 2021, Disney Plus premiered What If?, an animated anthology exploring how familiar MCU narratives might have unfolded under altered circumstances. Director Brian Andrews and head writer A.C. Bradley utilized a distinctive cel-shaded animation style that permitted visual spectacle live-action production costs would have prohibited. Rotten Tomatoes gave Season 1 a 94% critic score. Not good for animation or good for a spin-off, but genuinely acclaimed television. Episode 4 devastated audiences in ways the mainline MCU rarely attempts. What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart Instead of His Hands depicted a version of Stephen Strange whose grief over Christine Palmer's death drove him to increasingly desperate temporal manipulation. He consumed other beings to gain power. He broke the laws of reality. He destroyed his entire universe trying to save one person he loved. The episode's emotional devastation demonstrated something crucial. The format could deliver narrative weight exceeding typical MCU fare. Characters could die permanently. Heroes could fail catastrophically. Tragedies could remain unresolved because none of it counted toward canonical continuity. Season 2 premiered on December 22, 2023. Disney greenlit a third season before that second season even finished airing. The company's own metrics confirmed what the audience response already made obvious. This format prints money. DC is racing to catch up. The Justice League, Crisis on Infinite Earths trilogy, 3 theatrical-quality animated films released across 2024 and 2025, represents the most ambitious multiverse animation project to date, adapting the legendary 1985 comic event. A Blue Beetle animated series was revealed in June 2024 to be in development. The industry has recognized that alternate timeline content isn't a gimmick. It's a format that generates engagement, drives subscriptions, and keeps audiences talking between major releases. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Star Wars experimented with this exact approach over 2 decades ago, and then stopped. In May 2001, Dark Horse Comics published Star Wars Infinities: A New Hope, written by Chris Warner with art by Drew Johnson. The 4-issue series asked what would have happened if Luke's proton torpedo malfunctioned during the Death Star trench run. Yavin 4 destroyed, the rebellion shattered, Princess Leia captured and turned to the dark side by Vader. But here's what makes that series fascinating. Even in this darker timeline, Vader still found his way back to the light. Different circumstances, different catalyst, same fundamental choice. This series suggested something profound about Anakin Skywalker, that his redemption might be written into his character's core across any timeline where the possibility exists. Infinities continued with The Empire Strikes Back in 2002, exploring what would have occurred if Luke Skywalker had died on Hoth before Han Solo could locate him. Return of the Jedi followed in 2003 to 2004, asking what would have happened if C-3PO had been destroyed during the rescue from Jabba the Hutt, a seemingly minor change the series argued would have fundamentally altered the Ewok alliance and the battle's outcome. Critical reception was generally positive. Reviewers noted the format liberated writers from continuity constraints. The proof of concept was established. And then, Lucasfilm stopped. The experiment ended. The format was abandoned. When Disney acquired Lucasfilm in October 2012 for $4.05 billion, the priority was theatrical film production and establishing a new, unified canon. In April 2014, all previous expanded universe material was reclassified as Legends, non-canonical stories that existed outside the official timeline. Approximately 250 novels, hundreds of comics, and dozens of video games were simultaneously designated as alternate continuity. Think about the irony. By declaring the expanded universe non-canonical, Lucasfilm effectively created the largest alternate timeline repository in franchise entertainment. The Thrawn trilogy, the Yuuzhan Vong invasion, the Legacy era, all documented alternate timelines that audiences had already embraced. The infrastructure for a what-if approach already existed. What's missing is the institutional will to pursue it. Let me show you what they could make. Let me show you what Vader could have been. What if Qui-Gon Jinn survived the Battle of Naboo? Picture the moment differently. Darth Maul's lightsaber thrusts forward. Qui-Gon shifts. Not much. A half step, a turned hip. the kind of micro-adjustment that separates the living from the dead in lightsaber combat. The blade catches his side instead of his chest, burns through robes, sears flesh, but misses the organs that would have killed him. Obi-Wan still bisects Maul, still cradles his wounded master. But when he begs Qui-Gon to hold on, Qui-Gon does. The Jedi Council convenes 6 weeks later to address what they consider a bureaucratic inconvenience. Qui-Gon Jinn insisting, again, on training the Skywalker boy. Mace Windu's objections are the same as before. Too old, too attached, too emotional. Then I will train him outside the temple walls, Qui-Gon says, if that's what it takes. He means it. Everyone in the chamber knows he means it. And because losing Qui-Gon entirely would be worse than accommodating his eccentricities, the council relents. Anakin Skywalker becomes Qui-Gon Jinn's Padawan. The difference reveals itself within months. Obi-Wan would have trained Anakin to control his emotions. Qui-Gon trains him to understand them. When 9-year-old Anakin wakes screaming from nightmares about his mother still enslaved on Tatooine, Qui-Gon doesn't tell him to release his fear into the Force. He sits with him, lets him talk, explains that love isn't the enemy the Council claims it is, that the living Force flows through connection, not detachment. Your feelings for your mother make you strong, Qui-Gon says. The Council fears strength they cannot control. That's their weakness, not yours. When Anakin is 12, Qui-Gon takes him back to Tatooine, not on a mission, not with Council approval, just 2 Jedi with a ship and a purpose. They find Shmi still enslaved to Watto, and Qui-Gon, who has never cared much for Republic laws regarding property and sovereignty, simply takes her. You freed my son, Shmi says, somewhere in hyperspace. Now you've freed me. I owed you a debt, Qui-Gon answers. You trusted me with your only child. The least I could do was reunite you. Anakin cries, not from sadness, from relief so overwhelming it has no other outlet. His mother holds him for the first time in 3 years. Qui-Gon pretends to check the Navicomputer and wipes his own eyes when he thinks no one is looking. Shmi settles on Naboo. Queen Amidala, Padme, arranges housing and employment as a favor to the Jedi who helped liberate her planet. Anakin visits when he can. He writes letters when he can't. The gnawing absence that would have driven canonical Anakin toward Palpatine's false comfort doesn't exist here. The void is filled. The Clone Wars still come. Qui-Gon opposed the creation of a clone army, argued against Jedi serving as generals, predicted that the war was designed to corrupt the Order's purpose. The Council ignored him, as usual. But Anakin absorbed every word. When Chancellor Palpatine begins taking special interest in the Chosen One, private meetings, sympathetic conversations, the slow grooming that preceded canonical Anakin's fall, Qui-Gon recognizes the pattern immediately. He's isolating you, Qui-Gon warns, making you feel like he's the only one who understands. That's not friendship. That's manipulation. He's the Chancellor, Anakin protests. He's trying to end the war. He's been trying to end the war for 3 years. Ask yourself why it keeps escalating despite his efforts. Anakin doesn't believe him. Not at first. But doubt is planted. And doubt is enough. When Palpatine finally reveals himself, when he admits to being the Sith Lord the Jedi have been hunting, when he offers Anakin the power to save Padme from the death he's foreseen, Anakin doesn't immediately kneel. He ignites his lightsaber. You've been lying to me, Anakin says. Everyone was right. Qui-Gon was right. Your master doesn't have the power to save her. I do. Maybe. Anakin's blade hums. But I'd rather lose her than become you. He doesn't have to fight alone. Qui-Gon, Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, and Agent Kolar arrive together, because in this timeline, Anakin reported the Sith Lord's identity instead of trying to handle it himself. 4 Jedi Masters and the Chosen One against a single Sith. Palpatine is powerful. Palpatine is perhaps the most powerful Force user alive, but he's not powerful enough for this. Order 66 is never transmitted. The clone army remains what it was designed to appear, a tool of the Republic, not the Sith. The Jedi Order survives, and Anakin Skywalker goes home to his pregnant wife, to his mother who lives on Naboo now, to the family he was told he couldn't have. When his children are born, Luke and Leia, exactly as before, he holds them without the suit, without the mask, without the mechanical breathing that would have defined his canonical existence. Qui-Gon visits when the twins are 3 months old. He sits with Anakin on the balcony while Padme sleeps, and the children make the soft sounds that infants make when they're dreaming. "Thank you," Anakin says, "for everything, for believing in me when no one else did." "I believed in the Force," Qui-Gon says. "The Force led me to you. The rest was just stubbornness." Anakin laughs. It's a sound Vader would never make, a sound that exists only in this timeline, only in this version of a story that could have been. What if Order 66 failed? The Clone Wars animated series, which ran from 2008 to 2020 under Dave Filoni's direction, established the inhibitor chip mechanism that enabled Order 66. Organic technology implanted in every clone at birth, designed to override free will and transform loyal soldiers into executioners. A clone trooper named Fives discovered the conspiracy. He investigated a malfunction that caused his brother Tup to murder a Jedi seemingly at random. He traced it back to the chips, to the programming, to a plot that extended all the way to the Chancellor's office. And then he was killed before he could prove any of it. But what if he wasn't? Picture the scene differently. Fives, cornered and desperate, raving about chips and conspiracies and a Sith Lord in the Senate. Commander Fox's men closing in. Anakin Skywalker and Captain Rex arriving too late to save him in the canonical timeline. But in this timeline, Rex arrives 30 seconds earlier. He steps between Fives and the Coruscant Guard. "Stand down," he orders. "This man is under my protection." "Captain, he's a traitor." "He's my brother, and he's telling the truth." Rex removes his helmet, looks Fives in the eye. "Show me," he says. "Show me the chip." They extract it. Right there, in that warehouse, with improvised medical equipment and steady hands, and the kind of desperate precision that soldiers develop when lives depend on it. The chip comes out of Fives' head, small and organic and devastating in its implications. Rex holds it up to the light. "This is real." "It's in all of us," Fives says. "Every clone. They're going to use us to kill the Jedi." In the canonical timeline, no one believed him. In this timeline, the evidence is sitting in Rex's palm. Rex contacts Ahsoka Tano, who left the Jedi Order but never stopped caring about the clones who served beside her. Ahsoka contacts Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan contacts Yoda. Within 72 hours, a secret coalition of Jedi and trusted clones has confirmed what Fives discovered. The chips are real, the programming is lethal, and someone in the highest levels of the Republic orchestrated all of it. They don't know who yet, but they know enough. The removal process begins quietly. Clone by clone, unit by unit, the chips come out. Most clones choose extraction voluntarily when they learn what's inside their heads. A few resist, the programming runs deep, but they're sedated and extracted anyway. The 501st, the 212th, the Wolf Pack. One by one, Palpatine's weapon is disarmed. When Order 66 is finally transmitted, nothing happens. Well, almost nothing. Vader stands in the Jedi Temple at midnight, as he did in the canonical timeline. His yellow eyes scan the corridors. His hand rests on his lightsaber. Behind him, a legion of the 501st waits for the signal to begin the purge. But the 501st's chips were removed 3 weeks ago. "General Skywalker." Rex's voice is calm, measured. The voice of a soldier who has made a very difficult decision. "We have new orders." Vader turns. "What orders?" "Orders from the actual Republic, not the Sith pretending to lead it." Rex raises his weapon. "Not a blaster, a stun rifle." You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit mass murder. You don't understand what's happening. I understand that the Chancellor is a Sith Lord who implanted kill switches in my brother's heads. I understand that you knew about it and helped him anyway. Rex's voice cracks. I trusted you. We all trusted you. Vader's lightsaber ignites. The blue blade, still blue, not yet red, because he hasn't yet crossed the line that can't be uncrossed, illuminates the temple hallway. I'm saving Padme, Vader says. Palpatine promised. Palpatine promises everyone something. That's how Sith work. Rex doesn't lower his weapon. Come with us. We can help you. The Jedi can help you. But if you ignite that blade against your brothers, you become exactly what he wants you to be. The moment stretches. In the canonical timeline, there was no one to stop him. No one to challenge the choice he'd already made. He walked into that temple and killed children because there was no alternative path offered. No exit from the trap Palpatine had constructed. Here, the exit exists. The clones aren't his enemies. The Jedi aren't his obstacles. The only thing standing between him and salvation is his own pride. Anakin Skywalker deactivates his lightsaber. I need to see Padme, he says. I need to explain. You will, Rex says, after the Chancellor is dealt with. The arrest of Palpatine is not clean. The Senate Guard remains loyal, or compromised, depending on perspective, and the firefight in the Chancellor's office leaves 12 dead and twice that wounded. But the Jedi have prepared for this. Mace Windu leads the assault. Yoda provides support, and Anakin Skywalker, shackled and guarded but present, watches the man who seduced him die on a Jedi's blade. The Republic survives, damaged but intact. The Jedi Order survives, humbled but wiser. And Anakin Skywalker faces a military tribunal for his role in the conspiracy. A tribunal that ultimately sentences him to exile rather than execution, because the evidence suggests Palpatine's manipulation began when Anakin was 9 years old, and because Padme Amidala, still a senator, argues tearfully that her husband was a victim as much as a perpetrator. He never becomes Vader. The suit never exists. The breathing never haunts children's nightmares. He becomes something harder to define. A fallen Jedi who chose redemption before falling all the way. A father who raises his children in the Outer Rim, far from the temple that couldn't save him and the politics that nearly destroyed him. A man who wakes every morning grateful that Rex arrived 30 seconds earlier than he did, in another universe, another timeline, another version of a story that ended in ash. What if Padme survived? The medical droid's diagnosis was wrong. Simple as that. She's lost the will to live, the droid pronounced on Polis Massa, and the Jedi accepted it because they didn't know what else to believe. A perfectly healthy woman dying of a broken heart, while her children cried for a mother they would never know. But what if the droid was simply mistaken? What if Padme Amidala, who survived assassination attempts, led armies, defied tyrants, and never once surrendered to despair, found the will to live in the sound of her children breathing? Picture it differently. She flatlines on the operating table. Luke and Leia have been delivered, screaming and healthy. Obi-Wan stands frozen. Yoda bows his head. Then the monitors spike. Heart rhythm restored, the droid reports, processing the anomaly. Patient vitals stabilizing. Padme's eyes open. Not peaceful acceptance, fury. The same fury that drove her to vote against the Military Creation Act, to stand before the Senate and demand accountability, to love a Jedi despite every rule forbidding it. Where is he? She whispers. Where is Anakin? Obi-Wan can't answer. How do you tell a woman who just survived childbirth that her husband murdered children, that he choked her until she collapsed, that the man she loved is now encased in a black suit, breathing through a machine, serving the Emperor who destroyed everything they fought for? He's gone, Obi-Wan says finally. The Anakin you knew is gone. I don't believe that. Padme. I know him better than anyone in this galaxy. Her voice cracks but doesn't break. I knew he was afraid, I knew he was desperate. I knew Palpatine was manipulating him, and I didn't fight hard enough to save him. She tries to sit up. The droids protest. She ignores them. Where are my children? Luke and Leia are brought to her. She holds them for the first time, really holds them, not the brief moment before her canonical death, and something hardens in her expression. Not hatred. Purpose. We're going into hiding, she tells Obi-Wan. All 4 of us. Padme, the twins should be separated. If the Emperor discovers them, then we'll make sure he doesn't. She looks at the old Jedi with the same steel she showed the Trade Federation 2 decades ago. I'm not giving up my children. I'm not giving up on my husband. And I'm not spending the rest of my life hiding in the shadows while a tyrant rules the galaxy. They disappear. Alderaan briefly, then further. An agricultural world in the Outer Rim where a former queen can become a simple farmer and 2 children can grow up knowing their mother's face. She tells them everything. Not immediately, they're too young at first, but gradually. Their father was a hero. Their father was corrupted. Their father is trapped in a nightmare of his own making, and somewhere inside the monster, the man she loved still exists. How do you know? Luke asks when he's 7. Because I know him, Padme says. I've always known him, and I'll never stop believing he can come back. The children grow up with their mother's conviction. Luke inherits her diplomacy, her ability to see good in people others have written off. Leia inherits her fire, her willingness to fight against impossible odds. Both inherit her certainty that Vader is not beyond redemption. When they're 15, Padme makes contact with the rebellion. She can't stay hidden forever. Her skills, her connections, her experience are too valuable to waste. She becomes Vere, an anonymous operative who coordinates supply lines and forges alliances, always careful never to let her true identity surface. She hears reports of Vader, his atrocities, his efficiency, his apparent total commitment to the Empire. She doesn't believe them. Not entirely. He killed children, Bail Organa tells her once. I've seen the temple recordings. Whatever man you loved, he doesn't exist anymore. The recordings show what he did, Padme answers. They don't show why. They don't show the years of manipulation that led to that moment. And they don't show what's happening inside that helmet every time he breathes. You're deluding yourself. Maybe. She turns away. But I've been deluding myself about Anakin Skywalker since I was 14 years old. I'm not stopping now. The confrontation happens when the twins are 19. Different circumstances than the canonical timeline. No Death Star, no rescue mission, just a rebel operation gone wrong, and Vader appearing where he wasn't supposed to be. Luke faces him first. Lightsaber raised, untrained, but defiant. You don't know what you're doing, boy, Vader says. You have your father's recklessness. I know exactly what I'm doing. Luke holds his ground. And I know who you are. Before Vader can respond, a figure emerges from the shadows behind Luke. No weapon, no armor. Just a woman with gray streaked hair and eyes that have seen too much. Hello, Annie. The vocoder can't convey what happens to Vader's breath, but the pause, the sudden stillness of that massive black form, says everything. Padme. The name comes out broken. You died. I felt you die. You felt me lose consciousness. You felt my heart stop for a few seconds. She takes a step forward. You didn't feel me wake up. You didn't feel me spend 20 years raising our children alone, wondering every day if there was anything left of the man I married. There isn't. Don't lie to me. Another step. I've always known when you were lying, Anakin. You're terrible at it. The lightsaber in Vader's hand hasn't moved. He could kill her in a second. He could kill Luke, eliminate the rebel cell, return to the Emperor with proof of his eternal loyalty. He doesn't move. You have children, Padme says. A son and a daughter. They know who you were. They know who you became. And they've spent their entire lives believing you could come back. That's impossible. I watched you murder younglings, Anakin. I watched you choke me until I couldn't breathe. I watched you surrender everything good in yourself to a monster who saw you as a tool. Her voice finally breaks. "And I still believe you can come back. If that's possible, if I can believe that after everything, then nothing is impossible." The moment stretches. Luke watches his father face his mother across 20 years of betrayal and hope. And then Darth Vader does something he hasn't done since the day he swore himself to Palpatine. He kneels. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he says. "No," Padme agrees. "You don't. But you're going to get it anyway. That's what family means." What if Anakin had never left Tatooine? Shmi Skywalker looks at the tall Jedi with the kind eyes and the impossible offer. Take her son away from slavery. Give him a future she could never provide. Train him to be something greater than a mechanic fixing junk in Watto's shop. "No," she says. Qui-Gon blinks. "I'm sorry?" "He's 9 years old." Shmi's hand finds Anakin's shoulder. "He's all I have. And you're asking me to send him across the galaxy to learn how to fight in wars I don't understand." The boy has a gift. Lots of children have gifts. That doesn't mean they belong to you. She doesn't understand the Force. She doesn't understand the prophecy, or the midi-chlorian count, or the cosmic significance that Qui-Gon perceives in her son. She understands something simpler, that a mother who lets strangers take her child isn't protecting him. She's abandoning him. Qui-Gon leaves Tatooine without the Chosen One. The galaxy continues to turn. Anakin Skywalker grows up a slave. There's no avoiding that part of the story, no sanitizing it. He remains Watto's property until he's 14, when a Hutt dispute results in Watto's death and his slaves being redistributed. Anakin ends up working for a moisture farming operation in the Jundland Wastes, still technically enslaved, but to an owner who treats his workers more like employees than property. He's good with machines. Everyone who meets him recognizes it. Vaporators that should be scrap metal run for decades under his care. By 16, he's earned enough of his owner's trust to negotiate a modified arrangement. He can take outside repair jobs and keep a percentage of the payment. He never stops dreaming about the Jedi. Some nights, he wakes from visions of a war he doesn't understand. Clone soldiers, laser swords, a dark figure in a mask who breathes like a machine. He doesn't know what any of it means. He suspects it might be the Force that the Jedi talked about, the gift they claimed he possessed. But without training, without context, the visions remain fragments, noise. He marries a freed slave when he's 22. They have a son when he's 25. The boy has Anakin's mechanical aptitude, and when Anakin teaches him to repair a droid for the first time, he feels something close to peace. The Empire rises anyway. Of course it does. Palpatine's plan never depended on one child's destiny. He had other apprentices, other enforcers, other tools for the work that needed doing. But the Empire rises differently. Without Vader, the Jedi purge takes longer. Without Vader, pockets of resistance survive that would have been crushed. Without Vader, there's no masked terror to hunt down survivors and enforce the Emperor's will through fear alone. Anakin hears about it on the HoloNet. The Empire, the Rebellion. Names and battles that mean nothing to him because he's a mechanic on Tatooine with a family and a dead mother's grave to tend. Sometimes, late at night, he wonders what his life would have been if he'd left with the Jedi. He imagines palaces and adventures and a beautiful woman who loved him despite everything. He imagines power, glory, meaning. Then his son calls him for dinner, and the imagining stops, and he realizes that meaning was here all along. He dies at 73, peacefully, in bed, surrounded by grandchildren who know him as the old man who could fix anything. No mask, no suit, no mechanical breathing. Just a man who made a choice when he was 9 years old and lived with the consequences. Here's what I need you to understand about these stories. They're not criticism of the saga we have. The tragedy of Anakin Skywalker is one of the great narratives in popular fiction. A good man's corruption, a monster's redemption, a family destroyed and rebuilt across generations. That story works. That story matters. But so does hope. Reddit's r/Star Wars community has 3.3 million members. r/Maw installation, dedicated to lore analysis, has 300,000. Both communities feature constant discussion threads exploring these exact scenarios. Threads examining Qui-Gon's hypothetical survival routinely generate engagement exceeding 1,000 comments and continue receiving contributions years after initial posting. YouTube creators have built empires on this speculation. Star Wars Theory has 3.2 million subscribers. The Stupendous Wave has 2.1 million. Geetsleys has 1.3 million. A video titled, "What if Anakin Killed Palpatine?" accumulated over 2 million views. Videos examining Qui-Gon's survival consistently exceed 500,000 views. The audience isn't subtle about what they want. They're screaming it into the algorithm. And the algorithm is screaming back. This content performs. The format is proven. Marvel's What If demonstrated it commercially. 94% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. 3 seasons greenlit. DC is racing to replicate it with the Crisis on Infinite Earths trilogy and new Elseworlds development. Star Wars has advantages neither competitor possesses. A longer timeline, richer lore, decades of character investment from a fan base that literally grew up with these stories. Disney isn't failing Star Wars, but they're leaving money on the table. Pure upside, sitting untouched, while fans write the content themselves for free. Let me tell you who this series is really for. It's for everyone who watches Revenge of the Sith and holds their breath when Anakin walks into Palpatine's office. It's for everyone who has ever imagined Vader standing over Luke's crib in a timeline where he never fell. It's for everyone who needs, desperately, for the story to end differently just once. You're not weird for wanting that. You're not childish. You're part of a massive audience that has been creating this content for each other, for free, for decades. 200,000 stories on Archive of Our Own. Millions of comments across Reddit and YouTube. An entire ecosystem of fan-created alternate timelines because the official content doesn't exist. Disney can make it real. They have the format. They have the precedent. They have Dave Filoni, who spent 12 years on the Clone Wars, proving he understands these characters better than anyone else in the industry. They just have to decide to do it. Subscribe for more stories like this.